Oh dear. Even though I'm trying to be nice, it's unfortunate that you don't understand. My sister-in-law spoke coldly, as if pushing me away. She seemed adamant about inheriting my brother's estate and showed no intention of compromising. I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. All I felt was the growing anxiety overshadowing me, dragging my spirits down. My name is Kathy Morgan. I work as a doctor at a university hospital and turned 27 this year. My brother passed away just recently. Today, his funeral is being held, and I am at his house. Many people who remember my brother are visiting, and I can hear their conversations from all around. Weaving through the crowd, a woman approached me. It was Jocelyn, my brother's wife.
Ah,
there you are, Kathy. I'm glad I found you. You've been working hard today. Could we talk over there for a bit? When she found me, Jocelyn started a conversation. Oh. Jocelyn. Yes, sure. Feeling puzzled by Jocelyn's demeanor, I replied and followed her. My brother and Jocelyn got married 3 years ago and moved into this large house, where my brother and I grew up. This house was built with great care by my parents, who hired an architect friend of my father's. It has a large garden and other features they were particular about. Thanks to my father, who was quite wealthy, we lived comfortably. However, my mother suffered from a chronic illness and had been hospitalized since I was very young. It was a disease that gradually made it difficult for her to move, so returning home was not an option. Initially, we could still talk for a bit, but as days passed, even that became difficult. When my father could no longer have conversations with her, he stopped visiting the hospital. As children, we truly believed that my mother would recover and we would live together again. But that hope was unfulfilled, and she passed away in the hospital. I was 9, and my brother was 12 at the time. My father then immersed himself even more in his work and rarely came home. So, in this large, quiet house, it was often just my brother and me, almost like we were living alone. Later, my father collapsed from overwork and passed away, joining my mother. I started living alone when I went to university, reducing my visits to my childhood home. My brother continued living there and became busy with his career as a doctor. My caring brother, always worried about me, regularly called to check in. Those calls were our chance to catch up. I could sense his kindness and sincerity over the phone. No matter how old he got, he never changed. But now, he was suddenly gone. It all felt so unreal to me. The days leading up to the funeral passed in a blur. As we moved from the crowded room to a quieter hallway, Jocelyn spoke to me. Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about, Kathy. It might seem too soon after the funeral, but it's about the inheritance. It's a very important matter, so I thought I should discuss it with you beforehand. I was confused and uncomfortable with her sudden talk about inheritance. Are you talking about my brother's inheritance? Yes, that's right. Since we don't have children, the inheritance would be between you and me. Legally, I would get 3/4 and you 1/4. So, I would inherit $1 million. Jocelyn covered her mouth with her hand, but I could see a quiet smile forming. And she didn't stop there, continuing to speak. Oh, and I'll be taking this house too. After all, it's the house where I lived with Henry and it's filled with our memories. As his wife, it's only natural that I inherit the house, right? What I wanted to confirm with you, Kathy, was this. You don't have any objections, do you, Kathy? It's unpleasant to think about family members fighting over the remaining inheritance. I see it as a waste of time and effort. She spoke gently and calmly. But it didn't seem like the words of a wife who had just lost her husband. In her attitude, I couldn't sense any of the sorrow of losing a loved one. In fact, I had only met Jocelyn at my brother's wedding, making this our second meeting. The indescribable unease I felt the first time we met came back to me as I observed her behavior now. At the time, I only vaguely understood, but now, after losing my brother, she seemed to be revealing her true nature. Unable to contain my discomfort, I confronted Jocelyn. "Jocelyn, I think, this is not the way. Such important matters should be discussed properly on another day." Upon my objection, Jocelyn suddenly turned distant. Her previously calm face tightened, and she looked at me with cold eyes. "Oh, is that so? I'm trying to be nice, and yet you don't understand. What a pity. Well, I have a reliable lawyer. I will make sure to get my share of the inheritance." Her attitude changed abruptly as she said this, speaking to me in a condescending manner. "I married Henry because he came from a wealthy family. Why would I marry such a serious and boring man for any other reason? He was truly uninteresting, and I'm genuinely relieved that he's gone from this world." I couldn't believe what Jocelyn was saying. My bad premonition about my sister-in-law was proving true. Did my brother know this side of my sister-in-law? If he did, why did he choose to marry someone so unsuitable for him? Shocked and unable to say anything, I watched as Jocelyn walked away from me. Having said what she wanted and seen my reaction, she probably felt there was no need to stay any longer. I stood there, frozen, overwhelmed by complex emotions. Even after returning to my own home, I felt downcast and engulfed in gloom. I had a feeling that more unpleasant things might follow, leaving me restless. As these thoughts weighed on me, I found myself reminiscing about the years spent with my brother, feeling as if my heart would burst. Realizing I was now alone, tears involuntarily traced my cheeks. Then, a precious promise I had made with my brother vividly came back to me, as if I were seeing it right in front of my eyes. "Kathy, I've decided. When I grow up, I'll become a doctor, one good enough to cure Mom's illness. If Big Brother is going to be a doctor, then I'll become one too. We'll study together and find a cure for Mom's illness. Right? Let's work hard to become doctors together. Then, Mom will surely get better." I vividly remember my brother's face, beaming with happiness. That's right. I have that important promise I made with my brother. After our mother passed away, my brother once again affirmed his resolve to me. "Kathy, I've decided to pursue medicine. There are many people like Mom, fighting against diseases. I want to continue researching until we find a treatment for her illness." I felt the same way as my brother. That's why we both seriously aimed to become doctors. But now, my brother is gone. Thinking that I must work hard for both of us, my heart gradually cleared, and I felt like I could overcome any unpleasantness that might come. 3 days later, a problem arose. I received a call on my cell phone from the hospital where my brother had worked. The call was from a man named Robert, a subordinate of my brother. "Ms. Morgan, I apologize for contacting you suddenly. I need to talk to you about something regarding Henry's wife." He wanted to discuss the details in person, so I agreed to meet him at the hospital where my brother worked. As I waited in the cafeteria that Robert had mentioned, he soon appeared and quickly got to the point after a brief greeting. "Actually, yesterday, Jocelyn suddenly came to the ward. She brought some sweets, saying, 'My husband received great care here.' Then she asked who was the closest to her husband among his colleagues. Henry was truly kind and dependable, and everyone admired him. As I was his junior in college, I probably spent the most time with him. So, it was a regret of mine that I never properly thanked him. I decided to speak with Jocelyn, at least to express my gratitude." At first, we made light conversation, talking about Henry at college and work. Then, gradually, it seemed like she was probing for something. I felt Jocelyn wanted to know something else. Then she asked, "Is there anything my husband was hiding from me?" I instinctively felt that getting further involved was dangerous and answered, "Not that I know of." Suddenly, she raised her voice. "What? What did she say?" "Well," she said, "show me where my husband's belongings are. I can check them, right? If I find anything hidden, you better be prepared." Hearing this, I immediately understood. Jocelyn was searching for something related to the inheritance. Robert explained that he refused her request and sent her away, as the ward contains confidential and personal information. Then, she was seen wandering around the hospital, probing other hospital staff. I couldn't forgive Jocelyn for barging into my brother's workplace and troubling unrelated people. I thought it best to meet with her directly and settle things. Just as I was thanking Robert and about to leave, Jocelyn appeared at the hospital entrance. It seemed like she was planning to probe around the hospital again today. Noticing me, Jocelyn approached and spoke. "Oh, Kathy, what are you doing here? Were you thinking the same thing, perhaps?" I was at a loss for words. As I remained silent, Jocelyn suddenly laughed. "You're searching too, aren't you? You don't have to hide it." "Searching? For what?" "What? Pretending you don't know?" "Henry's will. He must have thought that if I got it, nothing good would happen. He would have written a will to prevent me from getting the inheritance. If he did write one, he must have given it to someone without hiding it. So, I probed you, but it seemed you didn't know." As I remained silent, Jocelyn continued talking. "But really, Henry's sister, not knowing anything. He must not have trusted you. You didn't hear anything even when Henry was suffering, did you? Henry didn't rely on you, it seems." My head spun, and I gradually lost track of what my sister-in-law was saying. "Given your reaction, you really didn't know." About a year ago, I noticed Henry's demeanor was different, so I asked him if something was wrong. Then he said he might be ill, with the same disease as your mother. He looked very troubled. His complexion was poor too. Henry was often busy and away, and I was out too, so we didn't see each other much at home. But I noticed something was wrong with him. He must have been suffering mentally. As for me, I married him thinking I'd never have to worry about money. To be burdened with caring for a chronically ill husband was the last thing I wanted. Jocelyn seemed to think she hadn't said anything wrong as she confidently spoke about Henry. I was in shock, more so about Henry suffering from an illness than Jocelyn's words. And stood there stunned. Henry sounded normal during the occasional phone calls. He must have hidden it, not wanting to worry me. But I should have noticed something was wrong. We were the only siblings. And I didn't even know that he was suffering from the same illness as our mother. It was terrifying, especially since I had seen our mother suffer from it. While I was lost for words in shock, Jocelyn pressed on. "Are you blaming yourself, Kathy? Honestly, you and your brother are too serious and gloomy. It's sickening. I can't wait to get the inheritance and say goodbye to such dreary people." After her cutting remark, Jocelyn was about to leave when Robert's voice came from behind me. "Excuse me. Is this really a conversation to have in the middle of a hospital? Frankly, it's a disturbance. There are other patients here. If you're done, please leave." "Robert, is that you? Were you eavesdropping just now? That's very polite of you." If Jocelyn raises her voice, even if it's a conversation I don't want to hear, I can't help but overhear it. Robert, turning around, looked very surprised.
Ah.
Doctor Hansen. Weren't you abroad? When did you return?
Ah.
Yes, that's right. I left there the day before yesterday and just got back. I was supposed to come back sooner, but my flight was delayed. You're Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister, right? I was just about to go see you. This is perfect timing. Yes. I am Henry's sister. But, to me? I awkwardly responded to the sudden conversation. Then, Scott started rummaging through his bag, seemingly looking for something. Where is it?
Ah.
Here it is. This. Here you go. This is Henry's will. He asked me to give it to you if he died. Sorry it's late. I'm glad I could finally deliver it. What Scott handed me was Henry's will, enclosed in a brown envelope. Why did my brother give this to you, Scott? I know, right? I've been friends with Henry for a long time. You might not remember me, Kathy. Do you recognize this? He showed me 3 moles on the back of his right hand. As a child, I saw those moles and said they looked like the Big Dipper.
Ah.
Those moles, could it be Scotty? Scott used to live nearby and was my brother's best friend. I affectionately called him Scotty and often played together with them. He moved away in high school, and I had completely forgotten about him. Kathy, you remembered. That's great. I reconnected with Henry when I became a doctor. I always felt we were similar, but I never imagined we'd end up in the same profession. Henry talked about surprising you with our reunion. But then he found out about his illness. That's when he came to me with a request. He knew I also had a law degree, so I guess that's why he trusted me with his will. Finishing his explanation, Scott turned towards Jocelyn, addressing her with a cold tone.
Ah.
About the inheritance, you might want to give up. Deceiving a kind-hearted person like Henry might work, but not with me. Unfortunately for you, Henry was aware of your cunning nature. He asked me to watch over his wife in case something happened to him. I've been getting reports from his subordinates about your abnormal behavior. Jocelyn, you were planning to find the will first, forge it, and claim the inheritance, weren't you? But it's too late now. It's in your best interest to back off quietly now. Besides, Henry said the right use of the inheritance is something only my sister Kathy would understand. Oh, I see. So that's how it is. But trust a sister who didn't even know about her brother's illness? Leave a large sum of money to such a young girl? Really, what was he thinking? Who knows what she'll use it for? Jocelyn maintained a defiant attitude, but her face had paled slightly. Looking around, I noticed a crowd had gathered due to the commotion. Among them were young doctors, talking to each other. Hey, isn't that the person who wrote that paper and made headlines recently? Right, I was thinking the same. That's Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister. I read her paper on the rare disease research, and it was impressive. Truly Henry's sister. I heard she's going to do research abroad soon. The conversation among the young doctors caught the attention of other medical personnel, causing a buzz in the area. More discussions were overheard. Isn't that Henry Morgan's wife causing a scene? She's famous for being seen around Fifth Avenue. Oh. That's true, shopping for luxury brands, going on trips, living a flashy life. I heard she's been supporting Gigolo. Maybe she's after the inheritance? That's possible. I mean, she's been wandering around the hospital, asking questions. It's creepy. Amidst various conversations, I realized I hadn't yet checked the will from my brother and peered into the brown envelope in my hands. Inside, there was a piece of stationery and a white envelope marked Will. Upon opening it, I saw it began with "To Kathy" in my brother's handwriting. As I read through it, I was so shocked by the contents that I instinctively handed the will to Scotty. "Scotty, this is..." After reading the will, Scotty smiled quietly and addressed Jocelyn. "Jocelyn, it seems you've lost. Henry was planning to end his marriage with you. The letter says so. About the marriage certificate you forced him to write. It seems Henry never submitted it. So he wanted to assure his sister that she could rest easy. You and Henry were effectively in a common-law marriage. You never had any right to the inheritance in the first place." "Huh? That's a lie. There's no way he would do such a thing." Jocelyn's momentum faded, and she began muttering quietly to herself. "Kathy, can I see that envelope too?" "May I?" "This envelope?" "Oh, sure." Scotty peered inside the brown envelope and confirmed its contents, then added another blow. "Here's the official will as well. Jocelyn, if you want to see for yourself, I won't stop you. Feel free." Jocelyn's face turned ashen, and she looked visibly upset. She seemed at a loss for words, her lips trembling continuously. Criticism of Jocelyn rose from the onlookers. Jocelyn, now without an escape, was frozen in place. Soon, the hospital's administration, alerted by the commotion, had the crowd disperse to their respective duties. When I looked up again, Jocelyn was gone. After that day, she disappeared from our family home and never reappeared before me. Following my brother's will, I inherited the estate. My research paper on the rare disease that affected my mother and brother received high acclaim, leading me to relocate overseas to continue my research. Part of the inheritance was used as a donation to help those suffering from the rare disease, and the rest was allocated for research funding. Scotty, my brother's best friend and now more than that, became my life partner. We, as medical colleagues working abroad, are planning to register our marriage this June. Our hope to free more people from the grip of the disease that afflicted my mother and brother remains unchanged. Together as husband and wife, we aim to continue our research, supporting each other along the way.